Hey y'all, I'm back with another Legacy video, and today I want to discuss my most recent 5-0 league that I played with Dimir Tempo. This list here is feeling really sweet. I've done a few leagues with it now. I had been trying to play without Murktide, and I really think the deck needs that closing power, and nothing does it quite like Murktide Regen. I think it's probably better than Barrow-Goyf at closing the games. It can pitch to a Force of Will. It's just, we know Murktide Regen is a good card. In order to make room for those and 3 copies of Daze, I have gone down to 3 Orcish Bowmasters. I've cut Snuff out. And apart from that, it's a pretty similar list from what I've been playing. 3 copies of Flow State, 3 Nethergoyf, 4 Push, 4 Tamiyo, 4 Ponder, 4 Thoughtseize, 19 lands. The sideboard is pretty familiar. One newer face is Unlicensed Hearse. I've been trying Dauthi Voidwalker for a bit, and while I do like the upside of Dauthi Voidwalker, I think that Hearse is harder to deal with for opponents and better in more matchups as Graveyard Hate. Dauthi could like snag an opponent's Atraxa or something like that, and that's pretty cool. But Unlicensed Hearse can just slowly eat away a graveyard, and then all of a sudden your Orcish Bowmasters can swing for like 12, or your Nethergoyf has haste and swings for 12 or something like that. So it can really get out of hand. And so I've very much liked that. I've seen a lot more Reanimator, both like Turbo Reanimator and Blue-Black Reanimators coming back. So there's a bit more respect for the graveyard, 2 Surgical, and then the Hearse as mentioned. So anyway, let's watch the gameplay footage. So match 1, I won the die roll, good start, and this hand is totally fine. Probably would start with the Nethergoyf off of a dual land turn 1, and then just use the cantrips to find more lands and some interaction. But this is pretty good against anything except for like something wildly unfair. So there's the Nethergoyf, pass the turn, and then my opponent on their turn has a Tundra and passes. So it's always pretty nice when your blue opponent doesn't have a turn 1 play. And I figured if they were going to swords it, they would have done it already. So that bodes well. After top decking another Nethergoyf, it seems like the best course of action is probably to, in some order, play land, ponder, and Nethergoyf. So you have to worry about, do you want your Nethergoyf to possibly get dazed? Do you want your Ponder to possibly get dazed? And probably you wouldn't want the Nethergoyf to get dazed. But let's see what I did. So I did Ponder first, probably looking for like a Thoughtseize. Lands, though, were totally fine. Like I said, I didn't want to get Wastelanded out of the game. If I had pondered before making my land drop, I could have Wastelanded them off this. Still a bit of a pity. But here I jam the Nethergoyf, not too worried about daze. And incredibly, it gets a Force of Will, pitching Force from my opponent. So that's a heck of an exchange. Grows this Nethergoyf, and then my opponent brainstorms rather than swords or anything like that. So it's looking pretty good. Curious what they were about to play on 2 mana to warrant that brainstorm. Let's see. So on my opponent's turn, they just play fetch land and pass. So there could be like a Felia coming at end of turn, something like that. Other than that, I'm not too sure what they could have at this point. They could be being very respectful of daze. So here, I go ahead and wasteland them. They float blue, go to the next phase and attack. They don't spend the blue. And then interesting decision here about whether to brainstorm to push damage. You'll see that I did, in fact, opt to do that rather than hold up Bowmaster, because I'm still being wary of daze as well. And here, it's a good opportunity to drop Tamiyo, or you could just shuffle away cards, but I think dropping Tamiyo just gives them a lot of problems to deal with. as their life total dwindles and their mana is still getting developed. So this is like the ideal tempo start. They did keep a card on top from their Surveil, and you'll notice I hid the Orcish Bowmasters in case they are a black deck with Thoughtseize. It's unlikely, but Marshflats, vaguely signals there could be black. So on my opponent's turn, they play another Tundra and a Flow State for only one card while I'm pushing all this damage. So that feels pretty good right there. And then on my turn, I redraw the Bowmaster, swing, hit them down to 7, play the Flooded Strand, and play Ponder. I had to shuffle the Ponder, but Tamiyo flips. There's now a 4/5. I happened into Force of Will blue card. My opponent's on 7 life. They did Swords the Nethergoyf, but here, that Thoughtseize is really nice. I play the land in case there's still a daze. Their hand is a couple lands, a Supreme Verdict, and a Spell Snare. So the obvious choice here is the Spell Snare, because Bowmasters plays excellently around Supreme Verdict. I could also, if I really wanted, minus the Tamiyo at any point and clip that Verdict from their hand. But I'm not going to play the Tamiyo out and let them spend all their mana here. So they play out an island. I Surveil on end of turn, see a Fatal Push, which goes to the yard. And I didn't play out the Bowmaster. Maybe I should have, but especially top decking another one. But I just continue to hold off, make them answer the Tamiyo. And then here, they did not draw an answer between their last turn and this turn. So they concede to the Tamiyo Ultimate. So game 2, you can look at the cards I boarded out. I boarded out 3 Force of Will and 2 Daze. The cards I boarded in were 3 Barrogoyf, the unlicensed Hearse, and you'll see I brought in 1 Force of Negation. So a lot of times in these control matches, Force of Negation can have some upside over Force of Will because you're more likely to be able to hard cast it. But it is ironic because a lot of times they're trying to stop what you're doing, and then you can't always use Force as a counter for that. But nevertheless, I figured splitting the single Force of Will and Force of Negation left in the deck would be okay. So this is my opening hand. My opponent had to mulligan to 6 at least. This hand looks perfect. Thoughtseize, Sculpt, trying to find a creature to enable Kaito, and then Kaito should just run away with the game. And you'll see this game how important this Kaito was. This was a very interesting game too. So my opponent does have a turn 1 play, and it is Tamiyo. That's like the one thing my hand was weak towards. And I top deck another land, which is not great. So I Thoughtseize, I see Swords and Wrath of the Skies. The take here is Swords to Plowshares because Wrath of the Skies is just very far away. It might sweep up clues or their Tamiyo or something. So just get rid of the Swords. But yeah, this Tamiyo has the ability to run away with the game. They play the Karakas out, which gives them the interesting decision of cracking the clue and tapping out of Karakas, or holding on to Karakas to protect their Tamiyo. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic as well to see what they choose to do. Obviously, they will be rewarded if they crack clues because I have no removal for Tamiyo. Now, I will say this hand has the potential to keep up with the Tamiyo. If I can get the Kaito down, the flow state is nearly turned on, and I have the instant already. So it's not the worst predicament, but I don't love being on the opposite end of a Tamiyo plan like this. So on my turn, I draw a Bowmaster, which is nice. That gives me the enabler for Kaito. That does actually create an awkwardness for my opponent. And so what I choose to do here is for the land drop, just play out the dual land. This means there's no priority passing. I'm instantly holding up Orcish Bowmasters. And now they have to consider whether to crack the clue hold up Caracas, play around Bowmasters. There's a lot of factors to consider. So on the end step here, I pass priority. My opponent, however, does not crack the clue. So on their turn, this actually, I think, was a spot where I probably should have Bowmastered. It forces them to crack the clue now, or if they don't have removal, and I know 2 of the 3 cards in their hand. So this would force them to tap down the Caracas. I think I should have gone for Bowmaster right here, but I think I just tried to play around them having like a Brainstorm in hand or something like that. I don't know. I think that was the best time to jam the Bowmaster. So they play the Plains out. They make another clue. And then they don't make any additional plays. And then here I definitely want to jam the Bowmaster because I want to get this Kaito down. So the games are over and it's time to jam. And this way, like, they still have this clue. So, like, they're not going to be able to play around Bowmaster indefinitely. So here, I just ping them and hope they don't have removal, but we just play on from here. All right, Fatal Push is nice, but they're very determined to keep holding up this Caracas. I feel like the damage is already kind of done with this Tamiyo. So here, just go ahead and fetch. I fetched the basic island because I'm still vaguely worried about back to basics. And then I'll just get this Kaito in, bounce the token, and then 0 the Kaito. Don't need to tap down the Tamiyo. They can always just Caracas it. And these are both good, but I should have sequenced it differently. So I drew the Polluted Delta and then left the Brainstorm on top. And again, I'm keeping the Delta because I think Back to Basics could still be a card they play. But I should have drawn the Brainstorm, and the reason for that is if they have Erode on the following turn, that's going to get my basic Swamp, and then it would shuffle my library, and I would much rather have Brainstorm still in my hand than the Polluted Delta. So I should have played around Erode and stacked this a little differently. So the turn goes back to my opponent, and usually in these blue-white matchups, when Kaito hits the board, you should feel pretty good. Obviously, Erode is a bit of an equalizer, but I don't see that card too often. I imagine most decks are on like 1 copy. Next turn, I'm going to be able to flow state, so that'll feel great. So they play another land. At any point, they could Wrath of the Skies and clear the Bowmaster. But pretty sure what they do here is they make this clue and decide it's time to finally flip their Tamiyo. So that will create a 2/2 and ping them for 2. But it'll start to buy them some time, as I can't just let the Tamiyo go unchecked. They actually had a Ponder, and they didn't shuffle. So when they didn't shuffle, I assumed they had a Road or some sort of answer for Kaito. But and then they play Quantum Riddler out. So they don't actually crack the clues, but they do flip their Tamiyo. So here, I like the Brainstorm pre-combat. I could have waited for combat, but I was able to get rid of some of those lands. And then here, I want to make sure that this Tamiyo gets hit as hard as possible, but I can still make them lose life by splitting up the attacks. So you attack face with Orc Army and Tamiyo with Kaito, and that way you can still 0 the Kaito. So I go ahead and fetch as well because I want a fresh look at cards from the Surveil. And I definitely like Force of Will. And then here I play out the Unlicensed Hearse and pass. And that does admittedly play into Wrath of the Skies, but it's not the most high value permanent. And here they do have Erode. So to me, this Kaito is the game right here. This Kaito is how I can get this Tamiyo dead. The Kaito can't be hit by Wrath of the Skies. So I will let them Wrath my board to keep Kaito alive. So they play Wrath. I get 1 opportunity to clear cards out of the graveyard, which is very important with the Tamiyo. So I clear Swords and Erode. My board gets wiped, except for Kaito. I do go ahead and Brainstorm, because if I can find a force, it's worth fighting over. But alas, I did not find it. And I redraw that land, not the best draw. I get a flow state, and definitely don't need to wasteland them, though they do have the Quantum Riddler coming soon. I just feel like it's not great practice to wasteland them. So I go ahead and Thought Seize them, and they have another Riddler in hand and another land. So the Riddler is the only take, and it's quite a good take. But you can see I would have been punished if I grabbed the wasteland. And I then use this opportunity to attack the Tamiyo, zero the Kaito. I know it doesn't draw cards in this situation. Or I'm sorry, it does. I didn't attack Tamiyo, I attacked their face. And then I go ahead and jam the Murktide. Thankfully, Swords is gone from their library. But now they have to get quite a lot of accomplished here. But you'll remember they have one Quantum Riddler in exile that was warped. So they play their land out. The Riddler will resolve, and it will draw them an extra card on the ETB. Plus, they have this Tamiyo that they can do something with. So they find Swords, they Swords the Murktide, and we play on. So now the Tamiyo is up to 6 loyalty. Barrowvoif was an excellent pickup. I have to tap down the Riddler because otherwise it just kills my Kaito. And so because I'm not going to be drawing cards, it's a good opportunity to attack the Tamiyo down. Play the Ponder out. Another Murktide looks good. So I play the Murktide. I clear the top of my library, meaning Tamiyo is gone. They have a Caracas anyway. And now I have a triple threat here, and this looks pretty good. They will definitely get to clear 1 with the Swords. If they have something they can play out upkeep, they might get to draw an extra card. But here, they find a Narset. And when they find the top 4 cards, they get a Swords. So they now have the ability to clear both of my creatures. And they play another land out, so they will draw another 2 cards. All right, so now I have to clear these Planeswalkers. I can't let them live. So it's a good opportunity to plus Kaito, which will also let me minus again without killing it. And here, I don't want to let them get another card with Narset. So the Tamiyo has to plus next turn. And I can kill the Tamiyo and minus this thing. So I attack, clear the Narset, and pass the turn. My opponent surveils on end step, puts Prismatic Vista into the graveyard, and then on their turn, because they only have 1 card in hand, Riddler will allow them to draw 2 cards. So they've gotten so much value already off of this Riddler, but it takes very particular cards to interact with Kaito. So they plus the Tamiyo, play out another land, and they pass. Nethervoif was a good draw that helps get closer to lethal, but here I have the opportunity to kill Tamiyo because this is a 4/5, as I have 1 emblem. So I just go ahead, attack down the Tamiyo, second main, minus, play out Nethervoif, and pass. And so my opponent, Prismatic Endings, the Goyf. Here, I have them dead in 2 turns, and the Riddler won't untap. So I can just hit them and draw cards. Draw a card, surveil 2, draw a card, I should say. And before I surveil, I do, I surveil before I surveil, because I want to find something good. Nethervoif is probably good enough because that's another lethal attacker. So I do keep that on top. I surveil. I saw 2 Nethervoifs, and I bin 1 and draw 1. So they're going to draw 2 cards, and that has to answer both Kaito and Nethervoif. They get Containment Priest, then they Brainstorm, which will draw an extra card. I go ahead and fatal push now. Though my opponent had to be happy that it wasn't a Bowmaster I was flashing in. So they got a lot of looks at cards. They Wrath of the Skies and then pass the turn. So presumably their last card doesn't have them dead to Kaito. So because I'm going to respect that, I take this opportunity to brainstorm. Although, no, I don't. I just play. I assume if they have something, it's a flash creature. And sure enough, they have Thelia. So here, you can fatal push because even if they Karakas to protect it, they don't have the mana to recast it. So very simple, fatal push, and the game is over. Before I start this next match, I just want to bring you back to the beginning of that game too, where I said how important that Kaito would be. So my opponent was able to answer a Bowmaster, multiple Murktides, a Barrowgoyf. They got multiple Planeswalkers. They got Quantum Riddler. And it was through all of that, the Kaito that stuck, that was able to simply Swiss Army knife style take over the whole game, removing sort of the Quantum Riddler, killing their Planeswalkers, drawing me cards, and ultimately the thing that swung for lethal. So Kaito is such a good card, and I'm glad that Flow State did not make that card irrelevant, and I think that match was very much proof of that. So for match number 2, I am on the draw. This hand is a risky one, as the potential for a brainstorm lock would pretty much doom the game. But these are all really good cards. If I do find the lands, then the flow state should be turned on. Tamiyo can flip quickly. So my opponent plays a basic island and passes. So I definitely have to worry a little bit about days. Drawing Force of Will was nice, though I would have preferred a land. So here I play Tamiyo, and my opponent does choose to force, and you see they pitch Time Spiral. So it's a high tide deck that I'm playing against almost certainly. And knowing that, and knowing that my mana situation is not as rough as I once thought, obviously this is a deck that plays Flusterstorm, and so there's a chance this could be blown out. But I'm so far away from this Kaito and Flow State that pitching one of these cards, I forget which one I pitched, but I would probably pitch the Kaito if I was making that decision right now. I did fight over the Tamiyo. So I actually pitched the Flow State. And here they brainstorm in response, so I don't have to worry about Flusterstorm. Whatever it was, they didn't find it. So my opponent allows Tamiyo to resolve, and we play on. So then on their turn, they ponder, they shuffle, then they play Soporific Springs. So I guess no island to be found. So this turn, I'm going to get to flip Tamiyo. Drawing the land is nice. It means I'm also going to get to Thoughtseize for sure. So here, brainstorm, flip Tamiyo. And tough decision about what I should keep. There's a clear game plan here of Kaito and Nethergoyf. So the brainstorm's not super important, and then I definitely don't need 2 lands here. So those are the cards I put back, plus Tamiyo, fetch, Thoughtseize, and my opponent scoops it up to the Thoughtseize. So I guess they thought this was a pretty unbeatable situation, and it is pretty messed up against combo decks how Tamiyo, you can Thoughtseize them, take their best card, -3, Thoughtseize them again. You don't even need to go for the ultimate, just picking up a card every few turns is pretty devastating. So on to the next one. So here's my sideboard plan. I can't say I really have a plan per se against High Tide that has been built into my deck, but I boarded out the 4 fatal pushes and the swamp. And I boarded into, and Brazen Borrower. And I boarded into the 2 Force of Negation, the 2 Consigned to Memory, and the 2 Surgical Extractions. You could surgical extract High Tide and pretty much end the game on the spot. There's just so many dead cards in the matchup. Some of these decks do play things like Cloud of Fairies, and so Fatal Push, or I believe the other card is Spell Seeker. So there are targets for sure for creature removal, but it's not really what the game is about. So here, this is a nice hand. I can Thoughtseize them turn 1, find my lands, and develop from there. It's always nice when you're not up against a wasteland deck. You can keep these one-landers no problem. Ponder for my opponent on their first turn. They shuffle. Go to my turn. Another land right away. And Thoughtseize. And their hand is Lorien Revealed, Flow State, Pact of Negation, and a bunch of lands. So here, I would probably take the Flow State. They could cast it next turn. The Lorien Revealed is very far away, and Pact of Negation is worrisome, but they're not super close to being able to win. So I want to just keep them far away from winning. So my opponent plays a Tundra, plays Voice of Victory. So I have to Force of Will that because I don't have any removal. So actually, if I had known it was a Voice of Victory deck list, I definitely would have kept in Fatal Push over like Surgical or something like that. But at this point, just have to play the game with the cards in the deck. So on my turn, I draw another land, which is not fantastic. But here, I already have Flow State turned on. So rather than pressuring them, I actually want to Flow State here. And I see lands and Tamiyo, so not great. I really wanted to load up on interaction there, but I just bricked on it. So they play a Flooded Strand. And now they have Flow State, but it's only for 1 card, so not the worst. And whatever card they got of Flow State is still the only unknown card. So drawing a Brainstorm was amazing. That's how you do well in Magic, is your deck just cooperates with you like that. And I already have great cards in my graveyard to pick up, so there's no need to mess around with this Tamiyo. Just flip it right away. And then here I decide to hold up Consign to Memory. I don't know, maybe that was a little weak, but if next turn is the turn they go off, Consign could be the thing that saves me. But after their end-step Brainstorm, they just play a land and pass. And I see a Brainstorm on top, and I actually just bin that. So, interesting decision here, because whatever card, like they just brainstormed, they know the top card of their library. They knew I was going to be able to Thoughtseize them this turn, so they could have played around that. However, I did decide they already had cards that I didn't want them to have in hand, such as Lorien Revealed and Pact of Negation. I would honestly, with them possibly untapping with 5 lands, be very happy to just clip that. Even in the face of Orcish Bowmasters, they could just, win. So I see their cards in hand. They don't have the land. And so here, they're pretty weak to Bowmaster, as you can see. So I believe I took the Turnabout, as that really would enable them in the face of a High Tide turn. So I ponder. These cards are really nice. Murktide, Surgical, Tamiyo. It's possible I should have stacked it so that I draw the Murktide next turn to try to win the game as quickly as possible. And then here, you'll see at the end of turn, they fetch. And they get Flow State. So obviously this is a good opportunity for Surgical, but the timing of it is really critical because they have this Brainstorm. So ideally, because they have multiple Flow States in their graveyard, I just let them do this, go to draw step, Surgical the Flow State in their graveyard, and take the one from their hand. However, Because they have Brainstorm, they would just Brainstorm in response, get rid of the one in their hand, and they get fresh cards. So rather than let them do this, I just Surgical right now. It also allows me to see their deck, which really, their only win condition was the Jace Wielder of Mysteries. So pretty crazy there. You have to just completely empty your library. So cool list. Take out their flow states and leave them with not too much and leave them very weak to Bowmaster. So they did find the 5th land, but they are choosing to respect Bowmaster here, which makes sense. Oh, I did stack the library so that I would draw Murktide, so that was smart of me. And here, just put them to the test. They do Brainstorm in response, which makes sense. And this is my opportunity to pounce. They actually could have packed it here and then just paid the pact in upkeep. And that probably would have been a better play than letting one of these things resolve. But it's kind of hard to think about that in the moment. So I hit him with the Bowmaster. I could just be dead next turn because they have plenty of life to work with. They can at least draw 3 cards. So if they found High Tide, it could be game on here. But they start with a Ponder. They did not shuffle. They find Teferi. They minus Teferi on the Murktide, so I instantly get to kill it. And then they get an island. And so here I just minus the Tamiyo again for Thoughtseize, and they scoop it up to that. So that Teferi was not very good for them. Obviously, it prevented them from dying immediately, but it seems like they just didn't really find what they needed. And they probably needed to actually keep this Lorien revealed in hand and just bite the bullet, hope that they could High Tide, draw 3, and win from there. But cycling it for an island kind of was giving up, I think. Match number 3, I was on the draw again. My opponent plays all sorts of stuff, play them a lot. So this is a nice, well-rounded hand. I definitely know my opponent has played Wasteland decks, so that's a little intimidating. But overall, you're not going to put this hand back. They did mold a 6. And they start with a Chrome Mox, which is pretty scary, because any sort of stompy deck, and they put Sink into Stupor. So I was thinking, probably some sort of artifact deck, City of Traders. So a hot start for them, and a turn 1 Tezzeret. They search their library right away for Lotus Petal, play the Petal out, grow the Tezzeret loyalty, and pass. So I'm feeling pretty behind here. Tezzeret is not like the craziest card because it can't plus on its own, and none of the artifacts that it can get are that good. So I'm imagining my opponent could, in the worst case scenario, untap and jam the One Ring. So it seems like a pretty nice opportunity to just Wasteland and pass, though I still feel pretty behind there, and top decking another Tamiyo was not very good. So here they have Mox Opal, then they have Manifold Key, so now they can minus again, and they do. And they get an LED. So only 1 card left, but my opponent's hand is quite strong. They're still a little short on mana. If their last card was One Ring, they could cast it next turn because you can untap an artifact, but that would be jamming into Daze. So just the sheer number of permanents they had versus me felt pretty bad right here. So I go ahead and ponder, and very thankfully I find the other land, and I find Force of Will. Because right now my opponent does not have anything truly scary, and Force of Will just was a really nice, necessary pickup. And then they play Minamo, School of Water's Edge, which can untap a legendary permanent like the One Ring. And then they have 4 mana, and it's the One Ring. Hey! So obviously this would be very devastating to let resolve, but Force Pitch Tamiyo seems like a pretty nice play. So then here, I don't think Bowmaster is really going to be that great. So I just go ahead and play out both these cards and give them a couple things to worry about. They get an Urza Saga, which is pretty nice, though I can answer 2 constructs. And so here I get to kill Tezzeret, and then I'll have to decide whether I want to draw cards or play the Bowmaster. Again, I don't think Bowmaster really looks that good here. So they don't play anything out, and I do decide to crack the clue. Because honestly, I don't feel good about my chances unless I can get another Force of Will. Instead, I get another Bowmaster. It's possible double Bowmaster could be good against the One Ring, but they can like untap it a bunch. So even the very first turn that they have it could be pretty devastating. So here, with all this removal in hand, I have a free attack. So I play the land out, which will also prompt my opponent to more likely make a construct to block, because now I'm threatening Kaito. Of course, I could always Kaito and get the Tamiyo out of there. But I do Fatal Push the construct, get my 3 damage in, make my clue, pass the turn. So then on my opponent's turn, they get the 3rd loyalty, they make a construct, which is ideal because I can answer a construct, but I can't answer some sort of bomb card. And then I fetch in response to the search to play around Pithing Needle, and I get Manifold Key. So here, I actually do decide to get the Bowmaster in because now I'm thinking about getting them dead. And especially since I can clear the construct, I can work towards that a bit more effectively. I draw another Tamiyo, which is a pretty bad draw. So here I obviously have to remove this card. And then I have to decide whether it's worth it to Bowmaster ping them and push damage with a +1/+1 on the Orc, or if I want to hold that up. And so it's helpful to do a bit of math there, right? Like I'm swinging for 5 this turn, and it'll be an extra damage up to 6. So that would leave them at 10 life. If I flash in the Bowmaster, they would be at 8 life, but one of those lives I can get in any point in my leisure. And then if they're at 8 life next turn, I would be swinging for 7. So not quite lethal. So because of that, it's probably worth it. I don't remember what I did, but it's probably worth it to just hold back, possibly crack a clue. So they go to 11. I think I said they would go to 10, but they go to 11. And they play a Grim Monolith, so they have a ton of mana. It's pretty intimidating. If they have something wild here, they can just cast whatever they want. And then they play Quiet Speculation. So pretty crazy. I assumed that this was going to get Echo of Eons, which maybe they're just at the point where they're willing to do that into a Bowmaster. They still have 4 life and they have to win the game somehow. I was also wondering at this point if this was like a Fantasticar deck. So I allow the Quiet Speculation. They do get Echo of Eons. You'll see that they got 3 copies of it. And so I just decide, hey, you probably don't have like Veil of Summer or something like that. So can you beat double Bowmaster? And they do concede to the double Bowmaster. All right, so on the draw for game 2, I boarded out the 4 Fatal Pushes, Basic Island, Murktide Regent, and Brazen Borrower. And so I brought in 2 Surgicals, I brought in 2 Consigned to Memory, 2 Fatal Push, and the Null Rod. And I kept the Swamp in because I thought maybe my opponent could be like a Harbinger of the Seas deck. I thought it was vaguely possible. So I didn't bring in mine, but I wanted to make sure I had access to Basic Swamp. So this hand is really borderline. I don't remember if I kept or mulled. My opponent is mulling, but If this doesn't top deck the land, I mean, it's just really stuck. So I did maul. This hand not much better, but it plays the game. So I put away 1 daze. Maybe I can just wasteland them out of the game. Draw well. But they have a hot start, Grim Monolith. And so I do wasteland them here. They can already cast like 1 ring around a daze the next turn. So if I leave them with that. So here they have Talon Gates of Madeira, and they have the 1 ring. So already this game looks pretty over. But, you know, gotta fight the good fight. I played Tamiyo. Maybe my opponent gets stuck on mana, but they have a key. You know, it's just a 1 ring game. I honestly, I think the 1 ring could totally be banned. I think it's not a card that really does anything cool. Some of these 1 ring decks are fun to play. I've played a bit of Tron. It is fun. So, you know, as someone who enjoys busted cards, I do get it. But I don't think Legacy would be worse if they banned it. So I did want to play this game out a little bit more because I wanted to see how my opponent wins the game. Just, you know, it's clear that this deck is not a very stock list. Here I get to see they play Glaring Fleshraker, which was helpful. Lets me know that maybe Fatal Push is a card I could consider. Also, at some point, I'm going to get to Surgical them and just see their deck. So here, I just go ahead and Surgical, look at their deck list. It's a Paradoxical Outcome list. And pretty much at this point, you can just scoop it up. I did allow my opponent to play just a little bit more, but double Fleshraker, you know, this is just the game. So I've seen enough. I scoop it up and on to game 3. All right, game 3, after seeing their deck a bit more, did I make any changes? Does not look like they made any changes. I might have swapped out the basic island for the swamp if I was redoing this. I decided Fatal Push, not good enough to bring back in. So this hand is perfect. Like, what could you ask for more than this? Thoughtseize them turn 1, Null Rod them out of the game. Wasteland answer, probably their only feasible plan after that point, which would be Construct Beats. Their hand, not great. The card that probably concerns me the most with a Null Rod in my hand is this Fleshraker. Flusterstorm is a card I can play around knowing about it. So I do take the Fleshraker. Fleshraker is also a route to them having mana that's not susceptible to a Null Rod. So my opponent plays the Manamo out and passes holding up Flusterstorm. But Flusterstorm, importantly, is not a card that can counter Null Rod. Consign to Memory, a great pickup as well. Now, if they top decked Force a Will, if that was a card they had in their deck, then we would have a game because they would force, I would force back, and they would have Flusterstorm. All right, so the Null Rod hits the stack and resolves. Now my opponent can sink into Stupor, but now I feel like they have to use this for mana, and you see they do play it out right away as Soporific Springs. And they just play it tapped. Starting to feel pretty good here. I can wasteland them off one of these lands if I'm feeling it. Consign could always hit the Urza Saga Chapter 2. I probably should have pondered after making the or before making the land drop, but here now I have an enabler for the Kaito in Tamiyo, an extra land, so I actually can wasteland, and it looks like I stack it that way, so I just forget about the ponder, wasteland them here. Kaito will be coming down. Obviously, Tamiyo is a little awkward in the face of Null Rod. So on my opponent's turn, they do get Urza Saga. So now there really is quite the decision to be made here. So if I go for the Kaito, they're going to possibly be able to make constructs. However, I know 4 of the cards in their hand. So they'll have 3 unknown cards in their main phase next turn. If any of those cards are a land, I'm kind of in trouble. I could always consign the last chapter and try to keep them from like needling Kaito. However, Flusterstorm is a fairly good answer for consign. Yes, if you replicate, that doesn't build Storm, but they can definitely at least partially answer that. So with that in mind, I decided to put them to the test and play the Kaito. Tamiyo also will be a card I would rather pitch at this stage of the game to force a will than the Kaito. So simply being able to make that exchange was pretty valuable. And then Murktide and Daze are great cards to see. Top both of them. The Murktide will block constructs if they have them. Here, we do keep playing. My opponent makes it to chapter 2, and they have another Saga. And now they play out Mox Opal, which was smart because even though it's fairly much a dead card, it means I can't Bowmaster a construct. So here, I do decide to just go ahead and swing and see what happens. My opponent could chump block, but I think they need to win the game by having really big constructs. So I assumed that I would get to draw a card here, and I can still consign chapter 3 if they make a construct. If they don't make a construct, I can't. But if they do, then I have that play available to me. If I find a land off the Kaito, I can either like wasteland them if that's something I have, or I could like consign replicate and hit chapter 2 and chapter 3. So lots of good reasons to draw cards rather than like plussing. Lots of options. So I do see the land and a ponder. I put ponder into the graveyard. That'll make Murktide bigger. So I make a 6/6 Murktide. My opponent makes a construct. I fetch now and pass. So now with these multiple triggers, I think my opponent stacked them wrong. I think you stack the searcher library beneath the saga so that the chapter 2 resolves first, because then you can make a decision about what you want to do. Like you can make sure I don't have consign, but they just go ahead and do this. So this is my opportunity to replicate consign to keep these constructs small, keep them from needling Kaito. And my opponent has seen enough. So I'm very much ahead at this point. They're going to have not too significant constructs. I can minus to make them chump with 1. Murktide is very close to being lethal. And this game really was probably just up to this Null Rod shutting off everything they could do. So round 4, I'm again on the draw. And nice hand. It's not the most exciting, but if I'm up against like a combo deck, it's pretty good. A definite keep. And my opponent has a basic island and passes the turn. So I draw Daze, which is also pretty nice. I'm a little worried about Wasteland right here, but I at least have Brainstorm and I have Daze to slow down the game. My opponent plays another island, so I'm starting to wonder, got another High Tide deck here. So there's Murktide, and so I go ahead and Brainstorm. Sorry, I went through that kind of quickly, but I found like a Wasteland. I didn't quite see what the other card was, honestly. But here you can just play the Underground Sea, play Tamiyo. My opponent does not show that they have any removal, but curiously, you'll see here, my opponent actually has Dismember. So when I see this, this does tip me off that this is some sort of mono blue control deck. Sort of interesting. Then my opponent brainstorms and plays an Urza Saga. So right now I'm thinking, what on earth is this? I thought maybe it could be like a mono blue breakfast list or something like that. So I go ahead and ponder. These are good cards. I draw the Thoughtseize, and then you'll see I sequence in a way. I was not playing around something particular here that I should have or could have. I don't know. It's a weird deck that my opponent's playing. So I wasteland here, and my opponent stifles. So obviously I could have Thoughtseized the stifle and then wastelanded, but I can't let them have Urza Saga. So I do fight over this, and I pitch the Kaito, figure that's pretty far away. Murktide is probably how I'm going to win. So they float a mana. I go to my next phase to clear the mana. Thoughtseize. And I see multiple consigned to memories. So at this point, I assume it's Dreadnought. Looks like they have kind of a bunch of dead cards, and I just don't want to let them have Murktide. So I take the Murktide. It's possible I could have let them have Murktide and taken Brainstorm and just thought, you know, I can count the cards. They would have a 7/7. Mine would at this point be a 1, 2, 3, 4. Mine would also be a 7/7. So if they played into Daze, I could have dazed it, or otherwise had a bigger Murktide. But they find a land on that Brainstorm. So I assume probably at least one of those consigns is gone at this point. But I go ahead and flow state and get some cantrips here, because if I Murktide, I would not have a good flow state the next turn. So I'm happy to just have a bit more interaction, a bit more cards. Is my opponent sort of looking low on resources? I find the land so then I can Murktide around Daze, which feels great. It's even a larger Murktide now because of the flow state. So it's an 8/8. I have them on a 2-turn clock, and they scoop right now. So I very much assume, even though I didn't really get to see what they're doing so much, these consigns and stifles, like it's got to be some sort of mono blue Stiflenought. So for game 2 on the draw, sideboarding, I didn't make many changes, but I boarded out the basic island. Again, I thought they could be a Harbinger of the Seas deck. 2 Force of Will, 2 Daze. The cards that came in were 2 Consigned to Memory and 3 Barragoyf. Pretty clean. So this is a nice hand. My opponent's good on 7 as well. Obviously, I don't have an answer to a Dreadnought. I have an answer to an Urza Saga, but you can't put back this hand playing Dimir Tempo. My opponent just goes land, go. I find a Ponder, which is great, and I just start with turn 1 Tamiyo. My opponent has no play. They pass to their turn, play Saga, and dismember. So that kind of stinks, but at least I have the Wasteland. Obviously, they could stifle it. And Barragoyf was great. So here I ponder. I figured this was an opportunity to get them to tap out of this. Like if they wanted to daze this, thinking I was stuck on lands, or Spell Pierce or something like that, I wanted to tempt them off of Stifle. But my opponent does no such thing. And I make an interesting decision here. So these are all good cards. I decide I want to draw the Thoughtseize. And I actually decide, rather than Wasteland and get blown out by Stifle, I'll Thoughtseize them. Because let's say next turn they have a land, they get to make a construct. Well, one of those constructs I'm going to get to bow down. So I could Wasteland this still next turn and use Bowmaster to get rid of their construct. I see their hand. They do have the Mycosynth Garden, which further confirms Dreadnought. This allows you to make a copy of the Dreadnought, which doesn't have the ETB trigger. So here with Bowmaster, I just go ahead and take their Ponder. They don't have a window next turn to Brainstorm. Then my opponent plays out the Gardens and passes. Now here, my opponent probably on their turn should have fetched, because now I just play the Wasteland out, and now they don't get to make a construct. Like they can fetch to make a construct, but then I Wasteland in response. So I pass, they fetch, and I pounce with the Wasteland. My opponent gets a basic island, and we play on. Now, they did have another saga, so I still have perfect information, or I actually don't have perfect information because I took that ponder. They have one unknown card. So again, I can make that same play of sniping the construct with Bowmaster. And admittedly, they have a brainstorm, so it's kind of tempting to Bowmaster, but I just decide I'm unlikely to be able to get this saga answered. So how about I just get down Barrowgoyf? And then when they make a construct to block, I snipe it and Barrowgoyf connects. So I was pretty happy with that line. I do get basic Swamp in case they have Harbinger. Play out Barrowgoyf and give them a turn to brainstorm. Just let them do their worst. So sure enough, my opponent brainstorms. They play Prismatic Vista. They don't learn their lesson about fetching before it gets to my turn. But here, I get to swing a Barrowgoyf. They make the construct. I can't blow it out with another Wasteland, but I can answer this thing right now. So that resolves. I connect for 5, mill 5. I get to pick up another Goyf, which actually puts them to lethal. And something I didn't realize as I was crafting this line is that I was in an even better position than I thought. Because if you look at Mycosynth Gardens, a card that is not really a legacy staple, you have to tap the Mycosynth Gardens. So I was thinking that this line would be good against a Dreadnought. They would have to not really chump, but like trade with the Barrowgoyf, and I would hit for 6. But the Dreadnought comes into play tapped, so they have to also have Consign or Stifle to have an untapped Dreadnought. So here, they float a mana, they get Dreadnought, they make the Mycosynth copy. And I remember they paused here, but they don't have the answer. And they do a Desperation Brainstorm into the Bowmaster and concede right on the spot. So even if they got to keep that Dreadnought, I had Petty Theft. Yes, they had Flusterstorm, though there's a good chance they might have brainstormed it away at that point. I also was going to get to connect with Kaito and tap down the other other Dreadnought for a long time. So I felt pretty good about my position. But anyway, won the game and got a trophy match. See if I could come away with it. All right, so with a trophy on the line, I get this really nice hand. I have to hope that I don't get wastelanded off of blue mana, but really solid overall, definite keep. I again am on the draws, so 4 times lost the die roll this league. And my opponent has Turtle and Tameo, which is really good against what I have going on. I decided not to force a will, but maybe I should have. I thankfully top deck the push, and I push off of the Underground Sea so that I was holding up Daze. But my opponent had no play. I would have loved actually to trade Dazes there. And then, yeah, awkwardly, my opponent has this Wasteland. So they Wasteland me, and we say go. Thankfully, I draw another blue source right away, and I play it out right away so that I can keep Daze up. And awkwardly, I have these Wastelands. I go ahead and brainstorm, and I do find a Kaito flow state. Starting to feel good here. I just have to dodge Wasteland for 1 turn. So I connect for 2, and my opponent has another Wasteland. So now I'm brainstorm locked. Now I'm in trouble. So I play the Wasteland, and you'll see as this game goes on, I never see another blue source and do not win. But let's see how it went. So here my opponent gets to stock up. I have to force this, pitch the Daze. I draw another Wasteland. That was the last card of the Brainstorm lock. And I'm not even, well, I do play it out, but yeah, Wasteland looks pretty rough here. My opponent has True Name Nemesis. So right now I'm starting to feel a bit of despair. Um, Looking like I'm going to lose this game and to a deck that's definitely not like a stock list. I don't know why that makes me feel worse, but I think when you have a trophy on the line, it's just easy to feel despair and salt as your deck is not functioning and you're losing to like a card that's been power crept out of Legacy for quite a while. But obviously that's not the most productive line of thought. So I swords my Goyf here, so I really just have nothing. They flow state, it's a good flow state. They stock up, so my opponent's just dunking on me here really hard. But it felt worth it to keep playing it out. A single blue source really helps. So I thought seize them, take the Murktide, but they can Mystic Sanctuary back stock up. Instead, they choose Flow State. I feel like you should choose stock up. It seems like the better card. They immediately flip a Tamiyo, and at this point, I've seen enough. Like, pretty rough. So, trophy match, get Wastelanded out of the game. Now I have to pull off 2 sideboard games if I want a trophy, so gotta lock in. All right, game 2, a must win. Let's see my sideboard. So I boarded out 4 Force of Wills, 1 Wasteland. You could see Wasteland obviously was not that good that game. So usually against decks with a lot of basics, I'm pretty eager to board at least 1 out. So the cards I brought in, 3 Barrogoyf, Unlicensed Hearse, and as you can see in my opening hand, Massacre. I figured they probably have more creatures than Tamiyo and True Name Nemesis. I was thinking they could have Felia, perhaps, though I didn't really see anything that would lead me to believe that. But I figured Massacre was just better than the Wasteland, and they were a deck that utilized the graveyard a fair bit, so Unlicensed Hearse felt good too. So this is obviously a pretty good hand I went ahead and kept. And it's just a clear turn 1 Thoughtseize. And sorry, I went fast through that, but here was their hand. Force of Will, Flow State, Swords, 1 land, Ponder, stock up, Ponder. And I took the Flow State. It's an argument to taking the Ponder with them stuck on 1 land, but they already have a Ponder. So they're going to get to Ponder. And I've gotten burnt pretty recently, so this thing is still fresh, of like trying to Thoughtseize away people's cantrips and like lock them out of the game instead of taking their good cards. And I figured stock up has higher ceiling than Flow State, but with them on 1 land, they're pretty far away from stock up, and I do have 3 days in my deck. So they cracked the Vista, Basic Island, Ponder, very predictable turn for them. No shuffle, so presumably they found the other land. And I get another Thoughtseize. So I fire it off right away. Good use of my mana. So the new cards are this Brainstorm and this Lockmare. I have the answer to Lockmare. I have many answers to it. So I don't need to take Lockmare. You can see they still don't have a land. So it's kind of tempting to take this Ponder now. Like maybe they were kind of greedily expecting to Ponder again the next turn. Or I could take the stock up. Let's see. So I took the Ponder. Yeah, when I saw a hand that had no lands in it, I definitely wanted to say, show me, show me that you can make a land drop. Because if you want to play around Thoughtseize, if you found a land, you would draw the land. Because if they pondered into, let's say, the Lockmare and drew that instead, then that's a card that I could just Thoughtseize. So I think what happened, though, is my opponent just didn't play around Thoughtseize, because as you'll see, they did have a land drop. So they play out Lockmare right away. And so I have perfect information about their hand. Drawing Flow State was great because that's going to be switched on here pretty soon. So there's lots of ways to do this turn. What I'm really hoping is that I fatal push this and they force pitch stock up. That would be the most ideal turn. So I go ahead and fetch. I want to make my land drop if possible. So I cast Brainstorm. I know I don't have to worry about days or anything like that. And I find the land, find a threat, unlicensed hearse. Interesting decision. I definitely am going to keep the flow state around. And then I don't have to shuffle. I think hearse is probably a little weak here. Let's see what I did. I don't remember. So I put the hearse back, so that's probably gone. And I put back one fatal push. So I can decide whether I want that push at a later time or not. And yes, they have a swords, but I have to win the game somehow. So if I can get the swords out here, it's fine. So I play the land out. And the reason why I like doing that here is it gives them more information about my hand to think that this Force of Will is probably a safe thing for them to do. So obviously there's no real reason, like I know they don't have days, I know the cards in their hand, but I want to make them feel more confident making what is actually going to be a bad exchange. So Force of Will, pitch stock up, the Dream. So they don't know the top card of their library. Obviously stock up had more high potential, more ceiling, but they kept the Brainstorm. And here I just decided to go for the Massacre and just play out Nethergoyf. So yes, they're going to get to swords it, and they have no play. They don't Brainstorm or swords, which to me actually that's pretty baffling because I'm an Orcish Bowmasters deck. You need to make a land drop. So I don't know. I guess they're just feeling patient. So I attack with Nethergoyf. I'm holding up Kaito, so it's a forced play. You have to swords this. And they do. But I'm going to get to see a lot of cards in my second main. So I start with this flow state. Flow state sees Nethergoyf, Tamiyo, Wasteland. So Wasteland not looking too good. Just get these cards. And I decide to play out the Tamiyo. It could flip next turn. I feel like I'm turning the corner in this game. So my opponent has the third land. They cast the Brainstorm. And very importantly, brick on removal. Because flipping this Tamiyo, I think, will be game ending. But I top deck Kaito. And that's probably better, right? Than just flipping Tamiyo here. So sure enough, get the Kaito in. Would love to just find another land and drop Nethergoyf for Tamiyo again. But I bid the Brainstorm. I find Undercity Sewers, yes, a land, but not the land I was hoping for. And Fatal Push on top, I just go ahead and keep that. My opponent gets to flow state, but when I have Kaito in play, I'm not too worried about their flow state. Yes, it's good, but every turn is a flow state when you have Kaito in play. And so I'm just worried about Erode, but they don't have it. I get to swing with the Kaito again. Hit them to 11. Daze looks okay here. Wasteland, not so much. So I do take the Daze. I play Tamiyo. I ponder. Ponder sees Murktide and Thoughtseize. So I feel like this game is wrapping up right here. Tamiyo flips. Thoughtseize them. They fetch in response. Get a Tundra. So maybe that Wasteland would have been okay. They Brainstorm, and I figure this is as good a chance as any to Daze, right? So I Daze, picking up dual land, and they scoop it up right there. So they didn't want to see what was in the hand. They can see that this game is basically over. So I got a game 3. All right, for all the marbles here. This did end up being a pretty epic game, by the way. So just strap in. Great hand. It's weak to like if they have a turn 1 Tamiyo, but I can at least go Tamiyo for Tamiyo, go take a double Wasteland to get me off blue, but that is vaguely concerning. And sure enough, turn 1 Tamiyo. So kind of scary here. And I draw a Wasteland, which is pretty bad. So I play my Tamiyo and I just say, let's play the mirror. My opponent on their turn has a Ponder. They actually do have a dual land. I'm going to get to hit with Wasteland, and they swords. So sadly, one of us has a Tamiyo. I draw another land, so I'm kind of flooded here. I Wasteland. I play the Murktide. Excuse me, I play the Nethergoyf. My opponent has Ponder, so still not getting to crack the clues. They shuffle, make another clue, and they pass. So they actually are kind of stuck here. So now I felt like maybe I'm going to win this. I'm about to drop this Bowmaster. My opponent has no white sources, but they do force pitch flow state, slightly growing my Nethergoyf. So now I feel a little less good about it, but I sniffed blood. And then they fetched, and they got an island, which was crazy to me. But makes sense. I had a little bit of a Freudian slip earlier when I said Murktide region because I made a 7/7 Murktide, and look at my hand. So, yikes. This is pretty bad. This was a moment where I felt like I was going to have a 4/1. But I drew the Barrowgoyf, which was okay. Maybe that'll stick around. They don't have blue, they don't have white. So there was a reason for optimism here. They flow state, it only gets one card, but they found a plains and they have swords. So what felt like a really good top deck and my one chance for victory was kind of just squandered there. So now, I don't know, I have to like ponder into Kaito, find Brazen Borrower. I don't have Snuff Out, as you recall. They attack with a Tamiyo, and oh boy, Kaito. That's how, that's what you need sometimes to get a trophy. So if they had held back the Tamiyo with all these clues they had made already, they might have won this game. However, I could just cast the Kaito with them having one card, so maybe it wouldn't have mattered. But as it stands, they made the choice they made. I go ahead and fetch before because I'm probably going to want to ponder or honestly play the Nethergoyf back out because I only get to tap down the Murktide. I need to get them dead. So tap down the Murktide, replay Nethergoyf, pass the turn. My opponent cracks a clue. They hold up white, so presumably they have Erode or Swords, but they pass. Here, I know I'm going to need to tap this Murktide down again, but I can ponder first. Thoughtseize push is not bad. I don't think I'm going to want all of those cards, but I also have some options. So I draw the Thoughtseize them. I see another Tamiyo, so that's kind of stuck in hand. So that just leaves Lockmare and Lavinia. Now, I've learned the hard way. Lockmare, that bottom ability, activated ability, can remove stun counters. So Lockmare is a very awkward card in the face of Kaito. But I was really happy with my sequencing here because now with this information, I still have this Sewers. So I can surveil away that Thoughtseize. So I plus the Kaito, which will allow me to tap down the Murktide again when the time comes. And I get to hit them for half their life here. So I play out the non-surveil end because the top of my deck is still push, which I want. Push will answer the Lavinia. So here they play the Lavinia out, and I draw the push. Now, it's possible here I could have just won the game, and I think I might have missed lethal right here because I don't think I won right now. I guess I don't even know what I was concerned about with them having blue held up and one unknown card. So I think I should have them dead here, but for whatever reason, I think this game goes one more turn. So I push here. So that's what it was. Yeah, I push, but they have force. So maybe I saw the lethal line, tap this down, push this, but here we are. My opponent is hellbent. I have a lethal attack. What do I do? This Murktide will untap next turn and could block or kill the Kaito. So what I decide to do is nothing at first, go to combat. They block both, which makes sense because if you go to 1 here and this is a 4/5 as well, then like just holding back the Murktide won't be enough. However, if they go to 1, they can maybe keep the Tamiyo. They could chump again and then use that as a window to kill the Kaito with Murktide. So my opponent had a few ways they could play it, but they go ahead and preserve their life total. I think that was wrong. So obviously my top card of the library is Thoughtseize, as you remember, which is pretty bad. So I go ahead and clear that. I minus, tap down the Murktide again. And now my opponent has all of this stuff to deal with. They crack a clue. They don't find what they need. So, man, top decking that Kaito was all the difference in the world in this game. That was very lucky, but that's how trophies go, right? You usually do well by getting a little lucky here or there, and your deck overall cooperating with you. But even just having your deck cooperating with you as consistently as you need is a form of luck. I do think I played this league pretty tightly, and you need to do that as well. Playing a deck like Dimir Tempo, it really rewards tight play. Here's the list again. I could see going down to 2 days, maybe putting a snuff out in or something like that over the third copy of days, but I've been getting a lot of 4/1s. Like I think my last 3 leagues have been this trophy and 2 4/1s. So the deck's fully functioning right now, I would feel, and answering a lot of stuff. You know, with these tempo decks, like 4 Bowmasters versus 4 Flowstay versus 2 Murktide, you know, these little adjustments seem like they matter a whole lot. You know, everything needs to be like perfectly balanced. And I feel like ever since Flowstate has been printed, I have not had like the perfect list. And this feels close to that. So I would definitely recommend this exact 75 at this exact moment. It feels good. I've been enjoying it a lot. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.